You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamamia podcast.
Tell me what you're holding.
Worry beads.
Oh my God, that's what I need. I have a whole lot of fidget toys, but they're not nearly as nice as those.
I've listened to a load of your podcasts because I listened to the Mamamia podcast anyway, but this one I didn't know existed. So anyway, so I'm like reading and listening to you or whatever, and I thought, you strike me as someone that could probably use a set of worry beads.
Yes.
In my 6 years of hosting this podcast, only one other guest has ever shown up with a gift for me. Sylvia Coloca made me a cake. It was delicious. It seems chefs are very considerate. You might know Jock Zonfrillo as the Scottish judge who wears a three-piece suit on Australia's Masterchef. But what you might not know about Jock is that his life story is quite simply incredible.
So I brought some. I make them all. So they're all made by me, and so I brought a selection and then you can choose one.
The best thing anyone's ever done for me in my whole life.
So you can just, throughout the process, just
to see which one speaks to me.
Exactly. That's it. You just have to see which one speaks to you.
From Mamamia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where people from all walks of life tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable. And this chat, well, it is very vulnerable and very candid. I have to admit, apart from knowing him as one of the new hosts on Masterchef, I really didn't know much about Jock before reading his new book, Last Shot, in preparation for this interview. I didn't know that he'd been a heroin addict or that he'd been homeless. I didn't know how deeply passionate he is about the culture and ingredients of First Nations people. I didn't know he'd been married 3 times. I didn't know he made his own worry beads. But after this conversation, well, I knew a lot, and I am so glad that I did. Jock is an amazing human being and a great storyteller, and he is so very honest. When he arrived at Mamamia and we sat down in the podcast studio, I asked him what he was holding, and he pulled out this big bag of worry beads. He said that it was a tool he's been using for his anxiety since his good mate died. And so we started chatting, both of us with our worry beads. And as you'll hear, we really didn't stop.
Do you sell them?
Yeah, we're going to sell them. They're called Kayam, and we're launching it in the next, month or something, I think. And the thing about it for me is that I never thought I would have anxiety, let alone admit to it.
Do you think you've had it all your life?
I think I've worked my way up to it, to be honest. You know, I think I've had so many things wrong with me over the years, and I've sat in a lot of sofas and talked about it to a lot of people that know a lot more than I do. But I think anxiety is something that really sort of came in the last decade, I reckon, you know.
For some people, addiction can be a way to try to self-soothe or self-medicate from anxiety. Looking back, do you think that
maybe
had something to do with?
Maybe. I mean, it could have been. I think for me, though, addiction happened so early, you know.
You were super young. You were 15, right?
I was 15. I started smoking heroin at 15. We were smoking pot behind the bike sheds when we were at high school.
Heroin seems like quite a big thing to do at age 15. Was there a gateway drug? I mean, it seems fairly extreme.
People talk about gateway drugs. I think for us growing up in Scotland in schools, you were surrounded by drugs, right, from, say, age 10.
Really?
You know, when you
What
get
kind
into
of
high
drugs?
school. So ecstasy, speed, cocaine,
Easily
heroin,
available.
pot.
Everyone was taking them.
Yeah, so like, you know, whether it was grass or it was resin really back then, and there'd be hash every now and again, grass every now and again, but readily available. The guys would come to school at lunch breaks and you could buy whatever you want. And, you know, I mean, even when before I'd left school, we were between us buying an ecstasy and crumbling it up and having
Where did
some
everyone
each.
get the money from?
Your lunch money, you'd steal money out your dad's coin jar or whatever, you know. We had a racket going at school. I'd buy packets of cigarettes and then sell them as singles. And then we had a bit of a gambling thing going on where there was 2 games we used to play. One was Wolsey, where you get as many people as you can. And it'd be 50 pence or a pound buy-in. And then you would throw the coin up against the wall, and the closest to the wall takes all the coins. So we would graft as many people as possible to get the lunch money, and then we'd all stand against the wall, and we would practice. You know, there'd be about 4 or 5 of us that would practice, you know, after school against the same wall.
So you were an early
and
entrepreneur.
we were very, very, very good at it. And so in the morning, the thing was at the 11 o'clock break, one of us or all of us would go out and just canvass players, basically. So as come the beginning of lunchtime,
Lead
you get the
magnets.
money off them. Yeah. And so, but you would clean up, you know, 25 quid a go. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, there was always a bit of money kicking around.
A lot of people who've struggled with addiction and managed to get clean talk about their life before and their life after getting clean. I wanted to ask you about the inflection point between those two lives for you, because you've lived big lives before, big lives afterwards. But you were at Heathrow Airport in the bathrooms shooting up before you moved to Australia. What was your plan?
I was in that toilet, and, you know, I had the works that I'd carried around with me for such a long time.
The works? Do you mean like the things that you need?
Spoon lighter, and I didn't
paraphernalia.
the paraphernalia, and I didn't have any cotton to put in the spoon, and I picked a bit of lint off my jumper, and I remember picking a lint off my jumper and putting it in the spoon and drawing it up and thinking, this is the last shot, and it's the last shot in so many ways. It's the last shot that I'm going to inject into myself. It's the last time I'm going to have to hide what I'm doing, because I'd spent 9 years hiding it. You know, my wife didn't even know. So,
Who knew?
Well, a couple of friends that, like, work friends, but yeah, nobody really. Like, I was very good at hiding it. Like, I never injected my forearms, for example. But it was also a last shot, as in I'd tried to get clean, you know, once, maybe twice before, and a half-hearted attempt, to be honest. And I knew that this was the last shot because we were immigrating to Australia, and something, you know, in my brain said, if I fuck this up now, this is it. My life's going to crumble pretty quick, you know, because it'd been 9 years, you know, like I was ready to kick it, you know.
Were there a lot of times during that last year when you said that to yourself, during the 9 years when you said that to yourself?
Yeah, all the time.
Like, this is my last shot, and then it wasn't?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was working in Cornwall before that for Sir Rocco Forti's sister, Olga Polizzi, amazing woman, incredible interior designer. And she sort of did a lot of the Forti hotels, and then she branched out and did the Tresanton Hotel by the seaside fishing village in St. Mawes in Cornwall in the West Country. Beautiful. And 30-something bedrooms, all individually done. And so I ended up getting sent there by Marco. And so that was
Marco
another
Pierre
moment.
White,
Yeah,
who
Marco
was your
Pierre White,
boss at the time.
And I thought, here's a chance to turn it around, you know, and you get headlong into this sort of opening of somewhere, the stress, the pressure, the adrenaline, the whatever, that you just keep going. There's a couple of things with an addiction and kicking it. One, you need to want to do it. And secondly, you need the time and headspace to do it. Because if you don't, it will not work. And somebody asked an interesting question yesterday. They said, what do you think in your circumstance has helped you get over addiction? And in talking to and answering that question, I realized that as an ex-heroin addict, I've cooked certain parts of my brain. And so when Loz and I go for a sunset walk when we're on holiday somewhere, and she's like, oh my God, this is the best moment of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's a fucking sunset. Seriously? Like, I can't see the same beauty and joy and that height of amazingness.
Really?
Like, so you look at something and I look at something, you look at it with great wonderment and huge excitement, and you're elevated by it and you think it's amazing, but I've fried
So
those
heroin
neurons.
does that?
Absolutely. And
So it dulls your ability to find joy and pleasure in any ways that aren't with heroin.
yeah, it's because you've reached such highs that
Nothing
that
compares
a
to
normal high is not high anymore. And so, you know, part of a lot of the therapy that I've been through in my life was recognizing my behavior in doing that. So, you know, I am aware when I go for that sunset walk with Loz and she's in a moment of bliss and I can see it written all over her face, and I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, it's just a sunset. And then I can recognize that, catch myself, and then go, actually, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Here's why it's beautiful. And then sort of
Talk yourself through it.
Yeah, talk myself through it. And it's not, you know, I don't feel the same thing as she feels. And that's my fault. It's on me. You know what I mean? But I can recognise my behaviour patterns, whereas before I couldn't.
What are the closest experiences you've had to reaching that similar height? Sex? Being a father? Cooking?
Yeah, I think,
This interview?
restaurants, definitely, like cooking for other people, sharing, teaching, is amazing. So the restaurant part where you've got, the day that leads up to service and the adrenaline that creates. And then you've got the service part, 6 o'clock rolls on and you're on from 6 to 11 and it's flat out. And that for me is, you're problem solving, putting fires out and all of the things that fires amazing things in your brain that a normal person would be like, this is too much for me. So that for me is like, oh, this is good. I like this. This is fun. And then the other thing that just does it for me and that puts me in a euphoric state is my children. My eldest is 20 and my youngest is 7 months. I've got 4 kids. And, on Sunday, I put on an old tracksuit when I got up and I didn't get out of it all day. I didn't leave the house. We played Lego. We read books. I was on all fours going around the house being a horse and I had the best day of my life. I loved that, and being together with Loz and doing that together was, that for me is the ultimate, because I think I've had 2 failed marriages and easily 2 of the breakdowns that I had were post-separation, where I had this weird thing when I was young where I always wanted to be a nono. I write about
to be a nono?
Yeah, I write about
you wanted to be a grandfather?
Yeah, I wanted to be a nono, yeah. A grandfather, so Italian.
Because you're half Italian, yeah.
So and it's a weird thing because, I hadn't even had kids yet, but I've had this.
You wanted to just go straight to that stage.
My nono died as well. There's no real thing. I write about it in the book because I'm still perplexed by it, as is anyone's sofa that I've been on. And my nono died when I was pretty young. I would have been like 6, 8, something like that. But he was an amazing guy. It's the reason I wear a 3-piece suit. He would wear a 3-piece suit to go and buy a newspaper. Do you know what I mean? And he always said, look after yourself, look smart, and he'd always be wiping fluff off a school blazer or whatever. But he was a gentleman, and the way he was with us as kids, I recognised then that was different than my dad. It was different than my grandpa, my mum's dad. He was him. And I admired the way he carried himself and the way he behaved with us. There was moments of childness, there was teaching, there was a bit of everything. And I had in my head always want to be a nono. And so the path to that is obviously becoming a father. And then when I first got married and I had Eva, and when that marriage fell apart, I was devastated because, I had visions of the big table with the family coming around on a Sunday and me cooking and blah, blah, blah. And it just got blown to pieces. And then it happened again in my second marriage. And so now, much older and wiser and I think a better person, Loz and I are on this journey together and we've got 2 kids plus my last 2 and it's a different feeling.
What you described about, playing with the kids and playing Lego and stuff, that's something that a lot of parents say that they don't do. But speaking to, my mum says that it's something you do with your grandkids often.
Really?
The appeal of being a grandparent versus a parent is that as a parent, you've also got life to do, you're working and doing other things. But as a grandparent, you're able to be much more present. So you're kind of like all fun, no responsibility.
No. But the present thing was the thing. So for me, as I said, sort of sitting in all these sofas. So the answer to that question goes back to therapy. And therapy for me made me realise that I was sort of OCD. I went to one therapist and they're like, I reckon you might be a bit OCD. So I'm not OCD. I don't go around flicking light switches on and off and locking doors 4 times before I go through them. Relax. And then the second therapist I went to see was like, we might do a little bit of OCD work with you. And I'm like, come on. And then the third specialist I went to was recommended by someone, immediately said, you are a high-functioning OCD with a binary outlook on life. And I was like...
Oh, speak to that. What does that mean?
Talk to me about that. And so they said, you've got binary tendencies, meaning that you've got 1s and 0s and there is no points in between. So either something is really fucking good or it's really fucking shit. And for you, anything that's in between, you cast away. And so...
That must be tricky in relationships.
It cooked my relationships is what
Yeah.
it did. And it did a lot of things. It fucked up a lot of friendships. There was a perfectionism at work for me that was bred by where I worked in the shifts that taught me going
That
back
seems
to
to
when I
be
was
a
an
chef
apprentice.
thing.
And it's like that
type of chef.
search for perfection constantly then leaks out to the rest of your life because it's all you know. Because at that time you were in a kitchen for 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. There wasn't much time outside the kitchen. So, of course, the traits you have for the 18 hours a day leak out into your life. And so recognizing that or being forced to recognize that actually made me face a lot of my issues as a person, and of which I had plenty.
Lots of people have one failed marriage. Some people have two failed marriages. And I shouldn't say failed because I just think that marriages sometimes end. So I'll correct myself there. When it came to you and Loz, was it her first marriage?
Third.
It was her third as well. Okay, so how did the two of you reconcile the detritus of your failed marriages and go, no, but this one, this one?
So there's always a story. And Loz and I have got a story, which is I was doing a Krug event here in Sydney when I was an ambassador for Krug, and I was cooking somewhere, and one of her friends was there. She was supposed to be there, but was in Paris getting over a relationship, just as you do. And a friend introduced herself, said, "Hi, I'm blah, blah, blah," and we talked, and then she disappeared, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then her friend sent her a picture of me and said, "I found the perfect guy for you. He's like it. He's European, he's a cook, he's a champagne ambassador, like what more do you need?" So she said, "I'll introduce you both because I got his number, and when you come back, I'll do the intro." So she forgot to do the intro, and then Loz, months later, was in a taxi going to her mum's house, and WhatsApp, how it drags photos into your album automatically. So she's gone through her album, deleting all the girls' chat pics that come through, all that shit. So she delete, and came across mine. She was like, "Oh, that's that guy. I might just look him up on Twitter." So she looked me up on Twitter, liked what she saw, obviously, followed me. And then I recognized her off Gruen. So I was like, "Oh, that's that chick off Gruen. Cool." So I followed her back, and I don't really use Twitter very much at all. Anyway, as soon as I'd followed her, she sent me a message going, "Hi, how you doing? Hope you don't mind following. I'm not a crazy stalker person. I just love what you're doing, And then we just started talking. And then, so that was on a Saturday night. We chatted. It moved from Twitter to text message at some point after service on Saturday night. It went to the early hours of Sunday morning. And by then I'd said, "Can I take you out for dinner?" And the first chat, I had the kids in the weekend. The first chance I could get to take her out was Tuesday. So I flew to Sydney on Tuesday. We met at the Pier 1 or something.
Yeah.
There's a bar there. We met there, and then we were going to get a water taxi over to Thompson's Bay and just have a drink. And I remember I had a whiskey because I was nervous as... and I don't know reason why. I've met hundreds of women before. Wasn't your first rodeo? Fully nervous.
Been on dates before.
So I had a whiskey, then I ordered a martini, and then I ordered another martini, thinking she's a kind of martini girl for sure. So I ordered another 2 martinis, and then she walked through the door, and then she had this hat on, and she had a flowy dress, and just the most amazing smile. And I just I've never believed in love at first sight, but I kid you not, from that second, she was it. And we started talking. Sure enough, I said, "Can I get you a drink?" She said, "Martini." Beautiful. I said, "With a twist?" And she goes, "Yeah, absolutely," which is what I'd ordered. And then that was it. We had a date then that went for days. It went Tuesday, Wednesday. I pushed my flight back to Friday. Then I got on a flight Friday morning because I had to do a service Friday night. And I said, "Hey, I don't want to get on a plane without you." And then she was like, "Neither do I." And so she came a couple of hours after, and then we spent the weekend in the Adelaide Hills, and we've spent very few nights apart since.
Stories that start like that often flame out quite quickly.
Jeez, don't jinx me.
No, you've had 2 babies. They usually flame out. If they're going to flame out, It's usually way before then. It's usually the guy that gets scared.
Yeah, right.
And pulls the pin.
Got it.
Because it's everything's accelerated, and then he's like, "Whoa, can't do this."
Well, I think
That hasn't happened with you guys.
No, and I think in answer to your question, which I've got this habit of going around the bend talking about stories.
No, I like it, yeah.
So at the end, Loz and I were really honest with each other. We're like, I had all the baggage. She had all the baggage. It's like, hey, we've got all this Samsonite luggage. At least it's Samsonite. It's good. It's good
How
quality.
much younger than you is she? Is she much younger than you?
No, she's 1980, so there's 4 years, 3 and a bit years between us.
Okay. So she's not much younger, but she didn't have children from her previous marriages.
No, so there's no kids there. But we both immediately went to the place which was, here's what I don't want in a relationship, and here's what I don't want for the future. And
what didn't you want?
I didn't want not to have kids. I didn't want to have a relationship where I wasn't present and understanding and loving, and I didn't want to feel as if I had to lie about something, to be good in a relationship, which happens.
Do you mean you wanted to be able to show up with your whole self?
Yeah. It's like there are shit bits about me, and there are plenty. And there's a whole history of shit, and I don't want to hide it, and that was the whole thing with the drugs and whatever. Anyway, we spent the next, couple of weeks pouring our hearts out and just going, it's all on the table. This is it. And so we can make a choice to move on with this or not. So
how long after that did you get married?
Well, we bought a house together 6 months later. And Loz was talking about freezing her eggs as part of putting our cards on the table. She was talking about freezing her eggs one day. And I said, how about you don't freeze your eggs and we just try and have a baby? And then we bought the house, and then she fell pregnant with Alfie. We tried, and we were getting nowhere, so we did IVF. And IVF, I've got a lot of mates that have had a real tough time with IVF, and so I think we were both pretty nervous with that. And we did a round. We got 14 eggs. There was one genetically perfect, and I was in the Faroe Islands when she got a call to say you need to get in hospital now because there's a problem, and I was in the Faroe Islands out of reception. Because we were a couple of months away, and we're like, it's still safe. You know what I mean? A couple of months out.
That's when she was 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
What was the problem?
Only a third of her placenta was working. And so it got to a certain point where Alfie just wasn't growing. He was just tiny. So he was born at 1.2 kilos, and as all babies do, they lose weight. So
Could you get back there?
He went down. Yeah, I managed to get back in time. He went down to 937 grams. And I remember one of the doctors in there looking, you obviously knew who I was, and he goes, you cooked bigger steaks than this, wouldn't you? And I'm like, mate, not the time. Not a good fucking time.
Too soon.
Definitely don't say it when she's around.
Yeah, too soon.
And I think Loz was just in a state of, we'd gone through the news he had a club foot, and we thought that was the end of the world. And then this had happened, and it was like, holy shit.
So a club foot is when one foot's turned in?
Yeah,
So it needs corrective surgery or what?
Corrective surgery. So it means as soon as they come out, they're in a cast, and then the cast comes off, they clip the tendon, and then you've got to go in boots and braces for, till they're 4, essentially. Which we thought was the end of the world. But actually, it got splinters. This is perfectly normal. Procedures worldwide, it's normalised. All good. Don't worry about it. Like, yeah, okay. But Loz's first child, I was like, what a shit start. You can't be in a bath with your baby because they've got a cast on.
It's not how you imagine it.
Do you know what I mean? No, totally. No. And so then when obviously he was properly preemie, it was just one of those situations where we couldn't touch him straight away, and we couldn't hold him, and his weight plummeted, and I was petrified that we were going to lose him. It was horrible.
How did you both support each other through that?
We just held each other non-stop, physically and mentally. We are stronger together. There is no question about it. I can't imagine a life without Loz. But also just the strength that she's got as a businesswoman and personally and as a mother is phenomenal. She had a marketing agency for 17, 19 years or something like that. It's like no mean feat. So she's strong, and I knew she was strong. But you need to be a different kind of strong to deal with what could happen. Do you know what I mean? And so I was just there. I shelved the restaurant. I shelved everything just to be, I'm lucky that, I wasn't working for someone else. I could do that. I could just shelve it all and say to my team, hey, I'm going through some shit. You need to get on with it.
How long till Alfie could come home?
5 weeks.
And when you got him home, did it take a long time to lose that fear?
No, I don't think it did. I think when we were home, I think the gravity of what had happened started to sink in. That it's like, Jesus, we really could have lost him for Loz, where I was like, yeah, I feel that every day. And so her
Welcome to anxiety.
Yeah, her version of that was a bit different than mine, but at the same time, it was super hard for her because it wasn't the experience of being a first mother that she'd imagined at all. And you can imagine coming home and, you know, your baby's still got a cast on and you can't change clothes normally. You can't bath them. You can't, there's this whole thing, right?
So
like it's not normal.
Yeah.
And so
It's
that
not the
was tough.
Instagram kind of image that people put across, is
No,
it?
and not that we were ever looking for an Instagram life, but I think I wanted, having had 2 kids before, I wanted Loz
for her.
I just wanted her to have the best experience, you know, and it wasn't, but it didn't matter in the end. And we had Isla 7 months ago, and that was a normal
Corrective
experience.
experience,
Correct.
yeah.
It was a normal pregnancy with no issues. Isla was born at a normal weight, and
What a relief. What's the relationship like between Ava and you have another daughter, Sophia?
Yeah.
And Lauren?
So Loz is, for me, she's always been someone I look up to, and I think it's one of the reasons our relationships probably work so well is she's not just an equal, she's someone that I look up to, and as a person, as a business person, and now as a mother. And Ava adores her for the same reasons, because she can see who she is as someone on television, as a businesswoman, as a mother, as a friend. Ava knows that Loz could never be a mum, but that doesn't matter. She's such a strong figure in Ava's life. And I think Ava is stronger because of it. And I think, you know, years gone by, I had to sit Ava down when she was 12, 13 years old, and there's a journalist had done some actual journalism and spoke to people that I used to work with and Marco and blah, 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 found out I was a heroin addict. And so he sent me an email and said, I just want to fact check a couple of things after speaking to these 8 people. And I was like, what? And then I kept reading the email and I was just filled with dread because nobody knew. And then,
Were you very ashamed?
Yeah, totally. Just embarrassed, ashamed, embarrassed, and guilty. You know, like I felt guilty.
Guilty
And
about what?
just having hidden it. Like I hid it from my wife, my first wife. Like it's no surprise that marriage ended.
Was
really.
that how she found out?
No, that was because we split up when Ava was 14 months. So we'd been back in Australia and I'd kicked it nearly 2 years by the time that had happened. But
So you kicked it without her even knowing that you were an addict?
yeah, so I pretended that I caught a bug on the plane. And so when we moved back...
After that last shot that really was your last shot at Heathrow?
Yeah. And I pretended I'd caught a nasty bug on the plane, and we were staying with her mum in Daceyville. And I just didn't leave bed for
You went
like
cold
10
turkey.
days. Yeah, totally went cold turkey.
That's quite dangerous from what I understand.
It is, but it's also, what do you do? If you've had how do you start to unpick something that you've had for that long? Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, you know.
So she never knew?
No, she never knew. And that journalist sort of reading that email and just going, yeah, so, you know, we want to blah, blah, blah. I want to fact check a few things, print deadline in like 3 days. I'm like, what? So 2 things. One, I've got to speak to my mum.
Oh, your mum.
And then the second thing is I've got to speak to my girls, which was just like I've come up against a lot of things in my life and people. There's been a lot of shit, but nothing can compare to have a conversation with your daughter like that.
What did you say?
I apologised, and I just talked about it. I mean, I had to tell her the facts, as in what's in the article, because that's what people at school talk about, that's what teachers would probably talk about. But then, obviously, you know, a 12, 13-year-old have got questions, right? So the questions started happening, and it's like, well, what is it? How do you take it? Is that a pill? Is it? It's like, no, it's a powder. Like, oh, what do you do with the powder? It's like you have to put it in a spoon and put liquid in it and cook it and put it in a syringe and then you inject.
And that's a
she's like,
conversation you never
my
thought you'd be
fucking God.
having.
No, but it's also just, it's embarrassing. It's
Yeah.
and that's where I talk about the guilt.
Yeah.
The guilt of you know, the guilt of doing that. And even for my mum, it's like, you know, I remember that conversation with mum, and my mum sort of saying to me, she goes, well, you know, like, I knew you were messing around or whatever, but I didn't really know you were taking drugs. It's like, Mum, I left school early and I went to Turnberry and started working as an apprentice when I was 15. So I wasn't living at home anymore. How do you know what I was doing? Like, you would never know. And it's
Because
not
she
and it's-
felt bad.
Yeah, and it's not your fault.
Yeah,
like,
of
it's
course.
my fault. Like, I did this. You know,
Yeah.
it was me. And I'm forever sorry that I bring shame on my mother and my dad and the rest of my family for doing what I did. And, you know, there's no question. My mum fucking hates it. You know, she hates that every time she picks up a paper, there is ex-heroin addict, blah, blah, blah. Because it was forevermore that. That's what it was. And that was always my sort of fear about it, really. And it happened.
I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter with Jock Zonfrillo. So, Masterchef and the food, do you eat everything that you try?
All day long, and I eat utter shit. So I eat fried chicken all the time. You know, I eat all the fatty stuff, sweets and fizzy drinks, and, you know, it's ridiculous. Plus, I'll taste 24 dishes, you know, and then we'll break, and I'll eat fried chicken at lunchtime, and then I'll go home and have dinner with
How do you do that? Like all the tasting of the food? Do you spit it into a bucket?
No, I eat it. That's the thing.
But don't you feel sick?
No, not at all. I'm like a bottomless pit.
But what about the other? What about Melissa and
They
like
struggle.
How do yeah.
They struggle. And, you know, for me, though, it's almost like insatiable, you know. So I've got a weird thing. One, I can eat a stupid amount of food and not feel satisfied. And the second thing is I've never had a hangover in my life.
Oh wow.
So I eat a lot. So I'm
You've got
like
some
custom designed for MasterChef.
Tricky
really.
metabolism
Weird.
situation.
You see that
going
or a
on
couple
there.
of tapeworms. It's one
Yeah,
of the,
that possibly.
could be.
They're very effective.
I don't know about that. I mean, I might have picked one up when I was filming Nomad Chef in Ethiopia or Belize or Peru or the Amazon or whatever. But
But I mean, in terms of what women have to deal with, you've seen that up close with Melissa and the shit that she's copped.
Yep. And I just don't stand for it. I will not stand. I don't stand for it in my own house. And
You stood up for her, didn't you?
Totally. I was just fucking sick of it. It was like,
Yeah.
why do people have to be like that? Like, what is it? And why do you think it's okay to send that shit to me as well? What do you think? I'm going to support you? Like, no, I'm going to hang you out to fucking dry. And that's it. And that's what I did. And it stopped. I did not get one more message like that after I did that. And it was, you know, it just, I felt so, I didn't feel sorry because it's not the word. I just felt a sense of shame on behalf of a lot of people for Melissa. It was just like, this is fucked. I just, it's 2020. You know, like, what's going on? What's going on inside people's heads? Also, you live in Australia. Like, what? When did you get here? When did your family get here? Like, don't even start me talking about the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, mate, yeah. So and I think it's got better. And I think, like anybody, Andy, Mel and I are stronger together, you know, and for a whole number of reasons, vice versa. You know, her support with me through the Australian stuff, for example, and Andy as well. Like when we had to close the restaurant during COVID, I flew back to Rana to do the final service in Adelaide, and Andy flew back with me just to do that final, because he knew, like, we put everything into that restaurant, and he knew how much it meant to our staff at the time. And like him, you know, we didn't know whether we were going to be closed for a month, a week, or whatever. But, you know, he also knew that for us, that the cash flow in the restaurant was tight at that end of the restaurant. Like, you run out of money when you're at that end pretty quick, because you're carrying a lot of staff, you're carrying a lot of wine stock and all the rest of it. So, yeah, we're like all people, you're stronger together. And I think with stuff like that, with what happened with Mel, with that guy, and just the casual stuff, like, I've got a zero
casual
tolerance. I've got
misogyny,
a
casual
zero
racism.
tolerance for that shit, whether it's male or whether it's an Indigenous something or whether it's a woman or I just, yeah.
You didn't start cooking to become famous or to
Absolutely
become a
not.
celebrity or to go on TV. You talked about in the lead up to Masterchef and on the first day you were anxious and you needed your worry beads. What were you worried about? I mean, I know I suffer anxiety too. I know it's often not a tangible particular thing, but was there a thing?
Look, I think it's a real working class problem to arrive somewhere and think that you're not good enough, And for me, I've done that my entire life. For every job I've got, I've felt like I wasn't good enough to be there. And MasterChef, honestly, was like there's 100 people on set, and all I could think of, oh great, there's 100 people waiting for me to fuck up and stammer my way through, an introduction, or and they're just going to be huffing and puffing and sighing and going, "Where's Gary, Matt, and George?" Come back, all is forgiven.
Big shoes to fill.
It wasn't so much filling his shoes. It was more, everyone's looking at you. It's like, they're filming you.
What was the process of getting that job? I imagine you had to do screen tests and chemistry tests. No?
No, I didn't. Anyway, I'd been in the show a few times, obviously as a guest judge, so I think they probably knew what they were getting with me. And
did you feel the same way when you were there as a guest judge?
Yeah, totally. The first time I went there, I thought I was getting stitched up because I said, I don't want to do it unless I can, there's some kind of indigenous ingredients. And, I said, I'm just not doing it otherwise. And so they had agreed to do that. And I think Kylie Kwong was a mentor at that time. And I brought all these ingredients, and Kylie was just like, she wasn't using the ingredients at that time. And she was like, wow, what's this? I've never seen Dorigo pepper before. What's this? What's that? What's that? And it was great, sharing that with Kylie. But I thought, I'm going to get stitched here because there was versus a contestant. And all I thought was, I'm going to get stitched. So I did nothing for the entire cook. You'll see, if you go back and watch that one, I literally did nothing for 40 minutes, and then
because I imagine cooking
spend 5
in
minutes
a kitchen is very different to cooking on television.
It is.
Is it boring?
Television?
Yeah, there's a lot of waiting, isn't there? In my experience of it,
there is. There's the hurry up and wait,
and reshooting, and just getting something from another angle.
Stand by. But in saying that, the kitchen runs very fluid in MasterChef. The cook is real time. So there is a process, and during the in between times of the process, we're checking stuff out. We'll check the dishes that they cook 7-8 times along the way. We check it as soon as they finish, so we know if it's crispy.
So you're not like in your fancy trailer, looking at your
hardly
phone.
ever in there. So I thought that I would be, because I thought there'd be all this time and I'd be able to do other stuff, and it's just not like that. As soon as you stop filming, you need to do something else, whether it's to understand something that's been like a new dish, a new curry that I've never seen before, for example, and it's like, right, let's start researching that. Where's it come from?
And it takes 6 months to shoot a season.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been doing some light stalking of Loz, your wife, and she likes you a lot. She thinks you're super hot. Like, a lot. Like, it was really interesting. She doesn't hide that. Not that she should, but she doesn't play it cool. And you don't play it cool about her either, which is because I've stalked you on Insta too, which I find really delightful, really, as a couple. You've been together a number of years. How have you both made this transition to you, being the star of a primetime show, as someone who didn't make a career of being an actor or a TV presenter or a pop star when you kind of know that that's part of the gig? How have you both adapted to that? Like, do women crack onto you? Do people stop you? I imagine people stop you on the street all the time.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, and there's a lot of filthy DMs and, tits and asses and lingerie and whatnot.
Stop it.
It's a thing.
How do you deal with that, and how does Loz deal with that?
So I do the content for social media, but I don't post it or do it, right? So one of the things that Loz and we have a super open relationship. So my phone doesn't have a lock on it or
not open an open relationship.
Sorry. Yes. No.
We should clarify terms.
Open as in we're 100% honest with each other. Yeah, exactly. So
closed yet open.
When Arana was sort of just firing in all cylinders, even pre-MasterChef, and Loz was like, we've got a bunch of advisors, if you like, very close friends who are very successful, and we often look to for advice. And they said, look, it's seldom going to work if there's two of you who are big figures in a relationship. It's just you're going to doom. So you got to work out between yourselves which one it's going to be. And so Loz was at a stage with marketing after having that business for nearly 2 decades where she was a bit over the landscape of marketing at the time. And so we agreed that she was going to jump on and manage me, and she became a CEO of the companies with Eora and really got stuck into the business side of, and the bit that I'm really not that good at anyway. And when that happened, it just, we never hid anything from each other anyway, but then you've got, you know, like the work social media things, my social media, it's just, I've
People
never
sliding into your DMs.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I don't want to have to hide that and it's like, so we knew it was going to happen. It happened. And I think even if you look at the amount of stuff that comes through, it's like, I don't need to see it anyway. Like, I don't need to see some woman's breasts from the UK or, you know, I just, like, it's lovely and thank you and very appreciative, but I actually don't need to see that shit.
Well, it's intrusive. You didn't ask for it.
Neither does she, but, you know, we've got a full-timer that helps us with the social media stuff. Loz overlooks it, and then I'm like the last to look at it. And then I provide all the content, but it gets chopped together and posted by the girls. And so Ava's been a part of that along the process as well.
So people need to know if they're sending you inappropriate things, your daughter might be looking at them.
Or my wife.
So ladies, or your wife. So just put it away.
Put it away.
No one asked for those pictures.
Yeah, it's social media is a funny thing. When we started Masterchef, we had a sort of social media meeting and the lady sort of sat us down, all three of us, and said, you know, Mel, you post like, 100 times a week. That's great. It's fantastic. Andy, you post like, 20 times a week. It's great. Jock, you post like once every 3 weeks. I think we might need to work on that a little bit.
Step it up, Jock.
And I'm like,
step it up.
Oh, man, and I find it hard because I find a lot of fakeness. And so I think if you look on, if anyone's looking at my thing, it's all real. It's like just me, and a bit of cooking and having fun and whatever. But I'm a larrikin at the end of the day, so there's always messing around, But it's social media. I think it's a problem that I don't think we've all grasped how much of a problem it is yet.
More kids?
We've said no at this stage.
Based on what?
Based on time and the time of our lives, and we feel really lucky to have had 2 beautiful children, and Loz is in her 40s now. I think it's one of those where we're kind of chancing our arm a little bit if we win again. And we're so happy, with our family, with our 2 kids and my 2 kids from before, and we're a happy little family unit,
I've asked you a couple of times about Sophia.
Yeah. So Sophia currently she's not in my life at the minute. So her mother and I, after we split, just didn't see eye to eye. And granted, I wasn't the best husband in that relationship. And it was a struggle with the relationship. She suffered from chronic depression. And in the end, I walked away from that relationship and carried the guilt of walking away from it because I was getting depressed. And post that, there was just this turn against dad scenario. And as I said before, that happened with Ava a little bit. But
she came back. Yeah,
she came back, and I got all the advice under the sun about, you can go to court like I did with Ava and spend, 200 grand fighting it, and then you've got a child that doesn't want to be in your company. Yeah. I've been there, done that. It's not a smart thing to do. And so currently it's, I'm ever hopeful that Sophia will reach out when she's ready.
Playing the long game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's mentally and psychologically for both of us probably the right thing to do.
Well, a final question. Eora, please, will it come back?
I'd like to think it would. I think we had such an incredible response here in Sydney when we did the pop-up last year. Oh, not last year, it was the year before, wasn't it? It was such hard work.
I know you say you only did the restaurant so that you could do the foundation, like as a means to an end, but I feel like you fell in love with it along the way.
I fell in love with people's reaction to not knowing.
Yeah, having their eyes open.
And I think that was something I wasn't prepared for. And Eora residents' Loz wasn't prepared for either. I mean, you go from somebody sitting down, and this is true, someone sitting down in Eora residence and being, like all judgmental because I'm white and, Indigenous ingredients and, they're some new age woke fucker. And they're like, well, where are the Aboriginal people? Are they washing the dishes or like what's? And it's like, oh my God. It's like, okay, and Loz is the best at, putting her arm around someone and going, let me just pull up a chair and talk to you for a minute about how this all works. And, Loz very delicately walks through the fact that, that we've never met an Indigenous, man, boy, woman, child that says, I want to come and live in the city and work in your kitchen, ever. Like, and nor would we recommend it. Like, they need to be where they want to be, which 9 times out of 10 is on country. Sure, there's the odd exception. But for the best part, they want to live on country. They want to have, some kind of prospect business, but not just for them on country, but for their people and for their future generations. And so the idea of having an Indigenous person washing dishes in Sydney, in Surrey Hills, is absurd. And Loz, as I say, is very good at sort of walking through that, where I just, after 20 years of this shit, I just see red. Honestly, it's just like, come on. And I know that, it's one step at a time. And it was always one step at a time. We built Eora, as you say, not because the last thing I wanted to do was a restaurant. I just didn't want to do it. And I knew it was going to be expensive and we were going to lose money, and we did. And there was the credit cards and the drama of all of that and no customers. And then there was a lady, Monica Brown, who works in PR, who did pro bono work. She used to do Heston's PR, and she did pro bono work to basically tell people overseas about Eora and what we were trying to do and set up the foundation and whatever. And so when Eora, because it was pure and honest and what it was, started getting written up in the Wall Street Journal and,
Suddenly the Australians took notice.
All of a sudden the Aussies were like, oh, what's in the Wall Street Journal? It must be all right. So, and that's what sort of slowly started turning stuff around. And, I can't be thankful enough for that, because it just wouldn't have happened otherwise without that strategy or her implementation of it as well. But that to me then was like, okay, it's working. Customers come in and they're like, wow, I had no idea that Indigenous ingredients were delicious. I had no idea there was, 60, 70, 80, and you're telling me that's only a drop in the ocean of flavours, and they're so different and unique, and it feels like something Australian, and it's like, wow. And so I think that for me was, it was kind of like we did it to get acknowledgement for Indigenous culture, right? And food was the medium. Right, like cigarettes were the vehicle to push nicotine.
Yeah,
the restaurant was the vehicle to push acknowledgement, and so that was its purpose for me. And I figured that I just need to put the restaurant at number 1 in Australia. And of course, everyone's like, "Oh, come on!" Like and we put that restaurant at number 1 pretty quick. It wasn't
for several years in a row.
It wasn't a slow burn. So
I hope it comes back.
It's such an expensive thing. Yeah, I know. I think there's got to be a way that can be more accessible.
Yeah.
My only regret about Eora is that by its very nature of being that type of restaurant, it was so expensive to run. From staff all the way through to ingredients. And if you think of, for us bringing it back post-COVID, it's like, we can bring a restaurant back post-COVID, but first of all, we've got to get the ingredients from a community, which, sometimes takes time. And then we've got to ferment them for 3 to 6 months before we can even begin to use them.
It's a big process.
So it's like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like ringing a
I'll bear that in mind.
But we've been asked, it's in consideration, and we're kind of looking at options.
Thank you for my worry beads. Thank you for everything you've done and you're doing with the Eora Foundation, all your work, and congratulations on the book. It is outstanding.
Thank you.
I love my worry beads. I keep them in the podcast studio and I'm holding them now. Jock's book, Last Shot, is out now at any good bookstore. And one day soon, you'll be able to buy your own worry beads from Jock. We will also link to the book in our show notes. You can read an extract of it if you want at mamamia.com.au. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you for listening to this No Filter. If you like what you heard, share this episode with a friend or rate and review us wherever you subscribe to your podcasts. And you know what? If you want to hear more from me, if you haven't heard enough, you can check out Mamamia Out Loud. It's a podcast that I co-host with Holly Wainwright and Jessie Stevens. We record 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and we talk about all the things that women are actually talking about. The assistant producer of No Filter is Lucy Neville. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on the Mamamia app.
There are some questions that are hard to ask even your girlfriends.
I'm 42, he's 25.
I feel like the most common amount of times couples have sex per week would be like once per week, maybe.
I cheated on the first guy I ever really liked, maybe loved.
That's where I come in. My name is Chantel Otten. I'm a psychosexologist, scientist, and sex and relationship expert. And I'm passionate about helping people find their pleasure and have great sex. This is why I'm the host of Mamamia's Sex and Relationships podcast, Sealed Section. This season, I'm answering your questions about everything from infidelity to kinks to postpartum sex and spicing it up in the bedroom. Nothing is off limits. Sealed Section. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.